Welcome to the beginning, hopefully, of a great weekend for everyone. I am back in Maryland, and I'd love to know where you guys are all at. It's always amazing to hear where everybody's from. So if you want to let me know, that would be great. Um, but I want to talk today about the system, about the solution for insulin resistance. I also want to talk about what causes it and some symptoms so that you guys can better understand this whole thing. Now, I talk all the time about insulin resistance and sugar being a driver, increasing the amount of insulin in the system. And that's the one thing that we talk about the most. But there's a couple of other things that I talk about less frequently that are primary causes of insulin resistance. And those are stress and inflammation. So we're going to go over all of that and help you understand how those things are causing insulin resistance and then what insulin resistance is doing to your body. But best yet, how this simple system is actually scientifically proven to help in a more natural way than all those drugs that people are being given that are causing problems for people's health while hopefully getting some benefit, but causing a lot of problems. So let's dive in and please ask questions, comment. I like when you guys do that. It allows me to know where you guys need information and what information you're interested in, because that's the most important thing. So we're going to dive in. 3 causes of insulin resistance: too much sugar, rising your insulin; stress, rising your insulin; and inflammation. So how do they all work? Well, with sugars, what's happening is as we eat food, and primarily the food that we're getting today, packaged, boxed, or as Dr. Bickman says, with a barcode on it, those foods have been created in a way that they actually increase the blood glucose in our system, which increases the need for insulin. And then we're doing this consistently throughout the day, and that's causing a problem for us. In fact, those packaged and boxed foods create this. I wish I had that screen up. I'll have to get that for later. But it creates this phenomenon where the carbohydrates are really spiking your insulin, whereas things that like proteins and fats really don't spike your insulin at all. Proteins maybe just a little bit, and fats not really at all. So the primary source of our diet, 71% of the calories we eat are coming from those packaged, boxed, bar-coded foods that are really spiking our glucose, causing this need for insulin that's foreign to our bodies. We really have never had to have this much insulin because of this processing of foods as we have in the past. But it doesn't just mean the bagged, boxed ones. You guys, are organic foods or raw, whole foods have been drastically changed too. In fact, on my trip to Montana, my mom, and they're old, so we'll hope some of them grow. They should. But I was so elated to find that she had a whole box of heirloom organic non-GMO seeds. So when I get to Kentucky next year, we're going to start gardening again, which has been a dream, and hopefully be able to provide some food that's not so genetically modified for myself and my family. But that genetic modification means we're not getting some of the fibers and nutrients we need in order to process the food, and that's causing these glucose spikes, which causes insulin spikes. I'll get into what happens with all of that in a little bit. The other 2 things, stress and inflammation. How does inflammation happen in the body? Well, when you have a surgery, when you have an injury, those things obviously cause some inflammatory response in the body. But what can also cause an inflammatory response in the body is just overextended fat cells. I think it was like 31 times the normal size a fat cell can grow to. But the bigger the fat cell, the more inflammatory it becomes. It hadn't had insulin in a month. So the other bike guy, tell me what you've been doing to not have insulin, and are you type 1 or type 2? Those are important questions for me to know. But as your fat cells grow, they start to get further and further away from blood vessels, and those blood vessels give oxygen to the fat cells. In this oxygen deprived state, they start producing something called cytokines, which cause inflammation in the body. And so these overextended fat cells can become inflammatory, increasing in insulin resistance in itself. So Yes, just being extremely obese can cause you to be more inflamed than someone who has a lot of fat cells, but they're smaller. So the size, it's not just the amount of fat you have, it's the size of the fat cells. Some people naturally have less fat cells, which means that to get to the same size as another person, their fat cells are going to have to be really big. Whereas somebody else may have multiple smaller fat cells, they're not going to become this hypoxic and inflammatory as those fats, those less fat cells that are getting really huge. But even in a person with a lot of fat cells, once they get to a certain point, they're going to start becoming inflammatory. That inflammation through a number of pathways causes you to be more insulin resistant. And this is a very short, brief explanation. I hope that I disseminate it well enough for you to understand because we get so stuck on it just being sugar. And what I want people to understand is we need to address some of these other pathways. And I'm going to give you some answers for that in a minute. Amazingly, the system that I'm using that addresses the sugar load also is addressing this inflammation load. Both products actually do. So the last one, stress. When we have stress, we have an increase in epinephrine. That increase in epinephrine can cause some inflammation. And actually, as the epinephrine goes up, you become more insulin resistant. So, wouldn't it be great if we could find something that gives us more dopamine, which then increases insulin sensitivity, helps reduce some of the stress so that when we have stresses, it's not so detrimental on our system and we can have that little bit of stress and still yet increase the dopamine that's helping us to stay less inflamed and insulin resistant. Never take health advice from people selling products on TikTok. Well, the health advice that I'm giving comes from Dr. Ben Bickman, one of the top metabolic scientists, and a number of research papers and whatnot that are helping people understand this. It's funny you'll say that, and then you'll go to a doctor who doesn't give you any of this information, but gives you a medication that's actually causing more damage. That's an interesting paradigm. I'm just simply disseminating information. If people want to go out and figure it out, look up some of the stuff, then go start searching it up. I'm just bringing it to your awareness that there is a better way. Now, if you choose to do this way, amazing, because thousands and thousands of people across the world have been finding, like myself, they've gotten off medications by addressing the root cause. And that's what we're talking about because medications are not addressing the root cause. So that's what I would love for everybody to understand. This is simply letting you know there's a different way that doesn't require medications and damage to your body that actually is helping you build health within your body. So that's what we're here about. Now, when we talk about insulin resistance, people think, okay, I'm not diabetic. This doesn't affect me. So it does, though, because 93% of us have a metabolic issue. And that's according to a published paper from 2022. Now, in 2018, that number was 88%. So we've increased from 88% in 2018 to 93% in 2022. And if we were to do a study today, I'm sure that that number would increase even more. 93% of the population being in this metabolic dysfunction, which is largely related to insulin resistance, means that almost every one of us need to understand this. How you choose to deal with it is up to you. I'm giving you a simple solution. You can try. I tried everything else, and like the medical medium and all these different products that other people are selling, and it didn't get anywhere for me. This system, and I'm going to explain why the system works so well, is the only thing that worked for me, allowed me to lose weight, allowed me to get off of 13 medications and regain my health and my life. So we're here talking about that now. Insulin resistance, when we have this level of insulin that's elevated, whether it be from sugars, whether it be from stress, whether it be from inflammation, that chronic increase of insulin then starts to cause other dysfunction in the body, which can increase your stress, it can increase your inflammation. So it's bidirectional. One of the best things we can do for our bodies in this onslaught of our stresses from today's world, our food from today's world is to just really address this root cause and help address insulin resistance, which will help with stress and inflammation, as well as those blood sugar levels. But left unchecked, now that hyperinsulinemia, high level of insulin from whichever source, starts to become something called insulin resistance, where the body just does not respond to the cues of insulin. I skipped a big piece, right? So, what is insulin? Insulin is a hormone that primarily carries energy to cells, energy being glucose. So, when you have a rise in glucose in your system, it's going to increase the amount of insulin that you have in the system. And that insulin then is able to take the glucose and deliver it to the cells. But when we're flooding the system with glucose all the time, it just becomes too much. And the cells start to shut down and say, I can't deal with this anymore. And now we have a system that's malfunctioning, causing things like weight gain and high blood pressure and a belly that's poking out and eyesight that's failing, and teeth and gums that are bleeding, and hair that's falling out, and joints that are deteriorating, and skin tags and dark skin patches, and a number of other things like PCOS and erectile dysfunction, all are very highly linked to insulin resistance. And I know I went through that quick, so we're going to go back over it in a minute. But if left unchecked, all of those things are happening in the background, and they can be happening to you before your doctor ever says, oh, hey, your A1C is high. Oh, hey, your blood glucose is high. I'm going to put a stamp on it now and say you're diabetic. In the background, this is happening. How? So insulin levels are rising, and it's starting to cause this dysfunction in the body. At some point, when the cells aren't taking up the insulin, they have to start pushing it into those fat cells. And remember, those fat cells getting bigger are going to cause more inflammation and cause more insulin resistance. So now we're doubling down on the problem. But when the fat cells start to get so big that they feel like they're in danger, that they might burst, it's just not healthy for them to be so big, they start spilling that insulin or that glucose back out into the bloodstream. Now your blood glucose, now your A1C is going up, and now the doctors have a measurable problem because they're not really checking for insulin levels right now. They're checking those blood glucose levels. But insulin could be chronically elevated for 10, 20 years. For me, it was about between 30 and 40 years that it was elevated, and I was having all of these things. I had PCOS. I was starting to have weight gain problems. I had hypertension. My belly was starting to poke out. My teeth and gums were bleeding. My eyesight was failing. My hair was falling out. I had skin tags at an earlier age. I had those dark skin patches on my elbows and knees and in my groin and under my arms. And no doctor was able to put all of that together and say, hey, Misha, there's this problem that's going on with you, and let's address that. All of this stuff will get better. It was only by starting the system that I really started to lose weight and to address my diabetes. That's all I was expecting when I started this system that I'm going to talk about in a minute. And as a result, I got off of 13 medications and reversed most of the stuff on this list. How? Well, when you get the insulin under control and the body can start to get energy in the appropriate amounts to the appropriate places, and you're reducing that fat, you can start to feel better as your cells respond more normally and do the job that they're supposed to do. So, whether your insulin resistance is kicked off by high levels of stress, PTSD, all of that can cause that as well. Inflammation, whether it comes from injuries, surgeries, or overextended fat cells, or just the fact that we're eating too much of the wrong foods too often, we can address all of those with two simple things that we're going to go over in a minute. And it really does work and help across a number of areas with insulin resistance. So let's get back to, I'm trying to think where was I going now? I get distracted and I've got my mind on other things. So I need a drink of water. What I want everybody to understand too is my life has completely changed, as has many other people. I have not been able to check messages in a few days, so I'm going to go through my messages today. But I have some people who are just so enthralled by the system and they know that they will never be without it because of all the things that we talk about. Now, what are the two things? Well, it's a tea that I have in the morning. You see me drinking it every morning, and a pre-meal drink that I have before I eat. Some interesting information on both of those. This drink that I have in the morning, not only is it helping with reducing blood sugar levels through some different pathways, it's helping increase GLP-1. So I don't know if you guys have heard of GLP-1, but you've probably heard of things like Monjaro, Ozempic, semaglutide, tirzepatide, a number of those. Those are GLP-1 drugs, glucagon-like peptide 1 drugs. What the glucagon-like peptide 1 does is really primarily two things. I was looking for the right word. It shuts down hunger. So it shuts down hunger in a couple of ways. The GLP-1 starts to cause some slowing of gastric emptying. Now, in small amounts, that's really great. But what's happened with the drug industry is that they've said, ooh, a little bit works. Let's do a lot. So now they're giving way higher doses of those than the drugs were ever meant to have in order to help people reduce these blood sugars and lose weight. So if there was a better way to do that, to get your own natural GLP-1 up without causing all the negative side effects that this overload of synthetic GLP-1 causes on your body, wouldn't that be a better way around keeping you satiated, keeping you less hungry, happier, and keeping your insulin levels down? Also, keeping inflammation down. Well, the tea does all of that. The tea can actually, as you have a stress, so the tea has some caffeine. So people are like, well, caffeine increases epinephrine. Caffeine increases this stress hormones. And so wouldn't that be worse for us? Well, the interesting thing with this tea is it also increases dopamine to the point that dopamine starts to counteract some of the negative effects of epinephrine. So now you're getting energy, but you're getting this counteraction that allows your insulin sensitivity to go up and allows you to utilize that fuel in a much better way while keeping you more satiated and less hungry. It gives clues to the brain. You're getting energy to the brain. So the brain is giving you less cues that you're hungry, but it's also giving this little bit of distension in the gut. Dr. Huberman talks about this. This little bit of distension in the gut makes you feel full, so you're not wanting to eat so much. So now we have the system where, hey, we're not snacking as much, we're not eating as much, and we can actually start to control those insulin levels. Is it about calories? Let's stop a second. Is it just about calories? Calories do play a role. I'm not going to say they don't, but there's been way too much emphasis on calories alone. Remember that 71% of our calories are coming from those packaged boxed foods that are keeping us hungry. And those boxed and packaged foods that are high in carbohydrates tend to burn through you quicker, leaving you in an energy deficit, making you want more. So you're more likely to overeat. Now, even ripping open one of those small bags of chips and eating that, you think, oh, it's harmless. It's between meals, it's harmless, it's just a little bit. The insulin spike that you can get from even that little bag of chips or that little bag of whatever that you're opening up between meals can elevate your insulin for 5 hours. And in the meantime, so now your insulin is elevated and it has never really come down from the meal you had before. And then within 5 hours of that little bag of chips, that little treat, that little boxed bag, something, you're going to eat again and spike your insulin again. So now your insulin is staying high all the time. It's one of the reasons why I get so frustrated. I never go on and bash other people on their lives because they're doing what they can. And if people want to hear what I have to say, they can come here. But this eating every 2 hours phenomenon that people talk about, if they really understood what happens to the body, and by the way, I bought into that. In my 30s, I started noticing my body was changing. I was still relatively small, but I was maybe trying to put on some weight. So I'm like, okay, what am I going to do? And I listened to the people who said, eat every 2 hours, cut out the fats. You don't need as much protein. And for a while I maintained my weight, but then all of a sudden I started putting on weight and I couldn't get it back off no matter what I did. And I just kept diving into this. Okay, eat smaller, more nutrient dense foods every 2 hours, and you're going to kick this thing. And I just kept doing that. And then all of a sudden I ended up at over 270 pounds, doing all the things that they're telling you to do. And that stayed for a long time. So understand that every time you put some of those foods in your mouth, you're spiking your insulin. Again, from the beginning, fats don't spike it, proteins spike it very little. So interestingly, I was at my mom's. This is just I want you guys to understand. I was at my mom's this last week. Again, she loved these old-fashioned foods that, that some of them are great, Swedish pancakes and cream puffs and whatever, but it was a whole lot of carbohydrates and very little protein. And I just tried to up the protein as much as I could while I was with her and use the tools. Now I got home and I'm like, oh, I just don't feel as well. I feel more inflammation. I feel more sluggish. I had a severe allergic reaction, which on top of all that, it just got worse. Yesterday, one of the meals I had was actually chicken that I cooked in cream cheese and French onion seasoned. And that was basically it: chicken, butter, cream cheese, and some French onion seasoning. What happened was, even though I think I ate about 100 grams of protein in the chicken that I ate through the yesterday, but I stayed fuller longer. I started feeling better. I rested better. I woke up this morning, my inflammation was down, my weight was down. I wasn't as hungry when I woke up because I focused on proteins and fats. Were they the same amount of calories as if I'd eaten a whole bag of chips? Probably pretty close. If the whole bag of chips, though, would have left me hungry, would have left my insulin spiked, and would have left me in a state where I couldn't burn fat. Eating proteins and fats actually helps you with fat burning and helps you get into that state where you can utilize that excess storage of fat because insulin is down. Why? Insulin, the hormone, is anabolic. It wants things to grow. And so when you're eating and when you're spiking insulin through these foods that are 71% of our diet, um, you're having this system in your body that's saying, we're not going to break down fat because I stored all of this energy as fat. Insulin saying, I stored all this energy as fat. I'm not going to let you break it down. It's my job to grow the body. So you cannot break down fat. You cannot do anything but store fat as long as insulin is high. In order to get to those fat stores and start to turn some of that around, you have to get insulin down. So I think that's really important. And two of the ways you can get insulin down are through the tea and the pre-meal drink, or the fiber that I drink every day. We're going to talk about that. Now, through the dopamine, increasing insulin sensitivity, now cells are able to take in the insulin better. And now I'm coupling that with some protein and fats. So I'm not spiking my insulin as high as well. I'm not getting in the carbohydrate load, but I'm getting in the energy and the building blocks I need. We have to switch from doing so many carbohydrates. You want to do them once in a while, that's fine. But you shouldn't be making carbohydrates and things that are high in things like fructose the main portion of your diet. And yet that's what we have. And we've been so trained to believe that this is what should be happening that we think that we have to eat every 2 hours because we're trying to. One of the influencers says, eat before you're hungry, and that's how you stop overeating. Well, every 2 hours eating, science has shown that people who think they're eating that 6 times a day or every 2 hours are actually eating 16 times a day. 16 times a day, they're spiking their insulin. And even in an insulin sensitive person, it can take 10 hours after your last bite of food for insulin to come down. So now you're having that popcorn or that snack with your late night movie, and then you go to bed, and less than 8 hours later, you get up and you're starting to eat again. Your insulin has never come down. You're never allowing your body to start utilizing some of the stores or burning off some of the toxic and waste that we have in our body. Autophagy creates this burning of the waste. So how do we get into autophagy? We drop the insulin. Does it mean, and I have a very dear friend who does amazing work with spiritual and energy healing and whatnot, but we had a conversation about a year and a half ago about autophagy, and he was under the understanding that autophagy can only happen if you're just drinking water. You have to do this water fast in order to do that. And yes, Tim or TM feels your stomach can't rest when you eat all the time. So I'm going to finish autophagy and then I want to talk about that because autophagy is actually occurring with when you have insulin levels down. So can you have some protein like red meats, chicken, um, cream cheese, avocado in a fasted state? Can you have some and not increase the insulin levels so that you're not stopping the autophagy? Yes, you can. So there's a what they call a dirty fast where you're having that high protein and fats and it still works. So some people who say, well, I can't fast for 16 hours because I have to take a medication. Well, until you can get off of those medications, then in the times that you have to have food in your stomach, in order to take the medication, why not focus on a high amount of protein and fats that are not going to spike your insulin? Cut the carbs, allow your body to have the medication it needs in this moment, and then have the carbs or the more insulin spiking foods later in the day while your body is still being able to utilize this insulin reduction in your body so that it can start to heal. So, and your stomach can't rest when you eat all the time. Exactly that. So, another great thing with this fasting that we do, and that's part of the solution, right? Fasting is part of the solution. And most people are like, oh my God, she said the word, I can't do it. I'm so food driven, I just can't do it. Well, that's why we drink the tea. The tea shuts down hunger and allows you to fast while feeling great and feeling happy. But if you're eating food, so it takes 4 to 6 hours for that food to digest through. You're eating food, your blood sugar rises in 2 hours. It takes about 4 hours for it to start to come down. And if you're highly insulin resistant, it could take a little bit longer than that. Now, when you're trying to rest and sleep, your gut's churning away and it's working and it's rumbling and you're having nightmares and you're not resting well and you're waking up more often. So, yeah, there's some efficacy to not eating just before you go to bed. That's one of the great things that you can do in order to rest, get your cortisol levels down, get your stress levels down, and start to become more insulin sensitive. Stop eating just before you go to bed. Stop eating about 4 hours before you go to bed. You'll find you rest better. Your insulin levels start to come down when that cortisol level is coming down because you're addressing stress by getting in better sleep. But again, like she said, you cannot rest well if or your stomach just doesn't ever rest when you're constantly feeding it. And we don't need to eat that often. Our bodies are amazing. They can store energy and give us energy even when we're not eating. That's why we have fat stores. That's why we have liver stores of energy in the liver, these little glycogen packages that break down into glucose later. The liver is storing a lot of energy for us. We just can't access it because we're never getting in a state where our body wants to access it. That starts to cause non-alcoholic fatty liver. So I hope that makes sense. Now, just trying to catch, there's some things that I can't see at all. And so I don't know, TikTok blocks some stuff. You guys. All right, now some symptoms of insulin resistance. And we're going to talk about how we're going to start to address this. So this on the list up here, you'll see stubborn weight. If you're putting on weight and you can't seem to get rid of it, it's because you're never getting to a state where you're getting insulin levels down enough that you can actually burn fat. What happens when insulin comes down? Could be 8 hours. If you're really insulin resistant, it could be 12 or 14 hours, but we're going to go with 8 hours in an insulin sensitive person. So you have dinner about 6 p.m. You have your last bite of food around that time. It takes a few hours for your blood sugars to spike. It takes a few more hours for them to start to come down. It takes about 8 hours for the insulin to go, okay, there's no more sugar coming in. I don't have to be out here and be this good queen's guard and take care of this body. I can come down and rest now. That's at about 8 hours. Once insulin comes down, it's not like this automatic switch that we switch in our metabolic system. We have some time for the body to go, oh, insulin's down. Okay, there's no more sugar coming in, there's no more energy coming in. We need to increase energy in the system. And so that means we need to start addressing some stores, some dead cells, some whatever that we have that we can convert back into energy so this body can run and do what it's supposed to. No, it's not going to take it from your muscle. Your body's way more smart than that. There's so many cells in our body that need to go before it's ever going to touch lean muscle or lean bone. Okay. So at about 10 hours in an insulin sensitive person, then glucagon comes out, this component hormone still created by the pancreas. And glucagon is trying to raise blood sugars up so you have energy in your system. So glucagon is like a scavenger, and it's going out and it's telling human growth hormone to come out. It's telling ketones to come out, and it's looking for all these cells that it can convert back into energy and burn off. Your blood sugars may rise even when your insulin levels are down if if you have hyperglucagon as well. So you could have a hyper reaction to glucagon when you're highly sensitive to insulin because your body thinks it needs sugar all the time, glucose all the time, and it really doesn't. You might get a spike of glucose at first because your body's just looking for that normal. And until you start to train it back to where it should be, you might have those spikes of glucose, and that's normal. It doesn't mean that things aren't working. It means that your body is actually redirecting, recalculating itself. Now, when glucagon is out, you can actually start to break down and burn fat. That's what I've been saying, right? So you're starting to break down fat. You're starting to burn fat. You're starting to have all of these other things go on in the body, like short chain fatty acids are being created as you're starting to clear through some of these toxins. That human growth hormone that allows your body to actually do some healthy growth is getting kicked out. So fasting is really important. Now at about hour 12, the HGH and ketones are coming out. It takes a couple of hours for those to circulate through and give the clues to the body. Now the body says at about hour 14, hey, we can burn fat. We can use this for energy. And you'll see I've done long-term fasts just to see what happens to my body. And my blood sugar levels rise and fall even in the absence of me eating anything. My blood sugar levels will dip down to about 60, and then they'll rise back up to about 120. That's glucagon working in the background, pulling in these stores from cells that need to go, from fat that needs to go, and converting it back into energy for my body to use. So if I've got glucose coming back up, why is the insulin staying down? Your body has back doors to get some of this energy in, and it knows the difference. So when you have this rise of glucose from glucagon, when insulin is down, there are other pathways to get that energy into the system without spiking the insulin back up. Now, when glucagon is too dysregulated and the blood sugars go too high, it could create a spike in insulin. That just means you have some work to do on getting your body more insulin sensitive so that you can get better. So one question that Dr. Bickman, he did a talk last night for us, and one of the things that he was asked was, how long? How long does it take to reverse insulin resistance or diabetes? Within 90 days, you can definitely see a reversal of insulin resistance and diabetes. Some people that aren't as insulin resistant can see it within 2 weeks, but you got to give it about 90 days for your body to start re-regulating. Now, some people, like I was, severely insulin resistant, and I didn't have a perfect diet when I started. It took about 6 months for me to reverse that insulin resistance. His talk was so amazing, Ro. I recorded it. I've been grabbing slides from it today so that I can do a little bit of a talk and try and be a little more intelligent with the talk. But his talk was amazing, and there's no way I'm going to remember all of it today, but we'll get it all passed out to everybody. I wish I had the brain that Dr. Bickman has and had, the years of study, but that's some dedication. That man has spent studying metabolism. Okay. So we have to get insulin levels down. We have to get to a state where we can utilize glucagon so we can create this autophagy and whatnot going on. Now, some things are triggering Ro for me. One of the things he said, some people will say our tea has a lemon flavor. It's a little bit sweet, but it does have a little bit of a bitter flavor. What I didn't know until last night was that little bit of a bitter flavor. So whether it's from fermented foods, from a tea like this where it has that bitter taste, little bit, will actually start in itself make you more satiated. Sweet foods, highly sweet foods, make you more hungry. A little bit of bitter starts to shut the hunger down. So the tea is an amazing combination of the two. It's the little bit bitter by design. That's part of why you're starting to see some satiety. That's why things like even diet sodas that don't really have a lot of sugar really shouldn't be spiking your insulin. But if you drink them, even the diet ones, you start to feel more hungry because you're pouring sweet into your system. The more sweet you put into your system, the more hungry you're going to be. So, savory foods, a little bit of bitter foods are a way to help keep your hunger down. And the tea does an amazing job of delivering just the right amount of bitter to start shutting down that hunger in your system so you're not less likely to reach for that snack or to be overeating and to break a fast. So it's much easier to do a fast when you're drinking the tea that's helping you feel healthy and full of energy. It's helping you shut down your hunger by a number of properties, not just a little bit of bitter taste, but through some neurochemical reactions in your brain and in your gut. Um, it's just an amazing tea. And there's a ton of science, not just science from our company, but science across the board from, what is it? Ro, do you remember it? I can't think of it right now. NCIB, NIH, there's a number of places that have studies about yerba mate and the benefits. Now, why this product though? Why this product with the yerba mate? Because it's not just a standard yerba mate. It is highly concentrated. So we hand pick it. We get the product at the herbs at the right time of ripeness. So it's not just indiscriminately harvested, raw, over green, overripe, along with some good leaves, and then packaging it all together, hoping you get the best of it. We're getting hand-picked leaves at the right time of ripeness by farmers who own their own farms, so ethically, sustainably harvested. Then we fire roast it so that we can get the components like the theobromines and the chlorogenic acids and all these big words that are really giving you an impact. Those anti-inflammatory, antioxidant properties can be released from the bulk of the plant. So now, when that's happened, we extract those things. We don't change the molecular structure. We're just removing it from the bulk that we don't need, and then we're concentrating it so much so that like chlorogenic acids are 375 times higher in this tea than in any standard yerba mate tea. So the natural solution, Claire, is simply a tea that I have in the morning and one that I have in the afternoon and a pre-meal drink. Now, it used to be, and this was interesting too, Ro, that I found last night. It used to be, those of you who have been with me for a while, it used to be that we had 2 of the pre-meal drink and 1 of the tea in a day. And we were told that if we drank this 10 to 15 minutes before, that was really the optimal time to do it. One of the great things with this company is, as Dr. Bickman pointed out last night, that they're so driven for science and for actually helping people that when they find science is saying something different than they previously knew, they will shift, pivot, and make a change. So further scientific study shows, and I've been talking about fiber a lot, is that this actually has better effects when it's taken just before a meal. It actually reduces blood sugars more when you drink it with your meal than when you drink it 10 to 15 minutes before. So that helps people because they're like I was. Like, how am I have a busy life, and I was doing some things at the time that, like, I didn't have 10 to 15 minutes notice sometimes before I ate. Now it's easy. So that explains why what all those times when I was rushing and I drank this just before I ate, it still worked tremendously and helped me get the weight off and helped me get my diabetes reversed, because it actually works better at reducing blood sugar when you drink it right before you eat. So the tea is, it's in my profile. Just tap on the link up above. When you tap on my picture up above, there will be a white box come up down below. This is on TikTok, and then you click on that. There will be red light symbols under my profile, and under that is a link for you to go get the system. Now, it's important to get it directly from the company, because otherwise you don't know what you're getting, and you're not getting the guarantee. So there's a 90-day money back guarantee, a quality guarantee, and a low price guarantee. When you order off of Amazon, you're not getting any of those guarantees, nor does anyone know to reach out to you to help you when you have questions about the system. So you pay more, you don't know that you're getting the right product, and you don't get all the support. So just get it from the link up above. It will take you directly to the company website where you can get it. So it's a tea. Now what we're doing now, because we're understanding more and more about chlorogenic acids. There have been so much studies about yerba mate and in specific chlorogenic acids and their benefits with our bodies, not only what's going on internally with blood sugars, what's going on with this um, this inflammation and oxidative stress and cancer, anti-cancer properties, that it's more about keeping those blood sugars down and your mood better. When you feel better, you eat less, right? Has anybody noticed that when they're depressed, anxious, struggling, that you just tend to look to food as a soothing thing? You just need that extra energy, and so you're eating more. Well, if you're feeling better, if you're feeling happier, if your mood is better, you're not going to eat as much. You just don't need that dopamine from the food to feel better. Now you're getting dopamine from naturally occurring from the chlorogenic acids and the theobromine in this, so that you're feeling better, less likely to overeat. But it's also giving you all these great things that I will talk about in a couple more days when I have time to ingest Dr. Bickman's work a little bit better. But there's a number of ways that yerba mate in this specific form, that's highly concentrated. And what I missed is that it's also highly purified. So toxins and stuff are removed. You're just not going to get it from any other tea on the market. And you're going to spend more for the other teas to get the dose of the chlorogenic acids, theobromine, and the positive components in this than you would with this tea. And it's super simple. Comes in packages. I just dump in water and drink it down. So the tea's doing a lot of good things, but one of the big things, the link doesn't work. It does. You might have to refresh your browser. Every once in a while we hear this, TM Fields, and if you just message me, I'll send you a link directly. Let me try to remember to message you after this, and I'll just send you the link. So the link does work. It's just oftentimes that a browser needs to be refreshed or something. So this is it, you guys. The second part, the tea or the pre-meal drink that I have before I eat, this is as simple as it is. Battery's going down on my phone. So all I do now, I'm having this morning because I have some nausea from a damaged heart from hypertension for years when nobody knew what was going on. We fixed that now, but the background is that there was damage to my heart, so I get nauseated. Now, I have the fiber because I know it's doing a lot of good, and we're going to talk about some of that. But it also helps me with nausea as well as reducing blood sugars. So I drink one every morning regardless, because I'd rather do that than omeprazole or something that's causing more damage in my system. Pour it in about that much water and shake it up. That's all I need to shake it. Now it's done. I'm going to drink it because usually I talk too long and it gets too thick. It has a light citrus flavor, a very light citrus flavor. So it's kind of like, those orange creamsicles. It's a little bit like that. But there's nothing in this that would make it so that you cannot have it with medications. Um, it's completely safe. I've had 5 or 6 of these in a day and been fine. Now, I wouldn't do that at first because your gut's not strong enough. Our guts are not used to processing this amount of fiber. Um, and working that hard, but that's part of the problem. That's part of why we're so sick. We have this food just hanging around too long, too often, and our guts are starting to suffer. And our gut being sick creates more of that inflammation, which then creates more likelihood that you're going to be insulin resistant. So drinking the fiber does a couple of things. It helps my gut feel full. It soothes my gut. It helps slow down the processing of sugars and how much sugar is absorbed into my system. But it's also feeding my probiotics, and I've talked about this for a while. And because Dr. Bickman and I talked about it about a year and a half ago, so I was really happy that he talked about it last night. But this, when it goes into your gut, the fibers in this are prebiotics. It's feeding those good gut bacteria, and that's causing something called short chain fatty acids. Those short chain fatty acids actually help you in a fasted state. It's helping you kick out ketones. It's helping you being satiated. It's helping you with inflammation in the gut. It's helping with a number of pathways. Those short chain fatty acids also help you feel more satiated because of all of the properties that they're giving off. So that's this. Now, before I eat today, I probably won't have a meal until about 2 o'clock. Gotta go paint my son's house. I got to my son's house. I got super nauseated on the way. My heart was struggling. I was full of inflammation. So I looked at my daughter-in-law and said, it's probably not the best idea for me to have all of this inflammation at a high histamine response and then jump into doing paint, which is going to cause that um, to be even worse. So, fiber inflames your diverticulosis. Are you just doing something like psyllium husk, like this? If you're just doing this, yes, you can have problems with your diverticulosis because it's very rough and it can cause more problems with the gut than good. This is 7 different types of soluble and insoluble fiber. I had severe IBS. I had some diverticulosis. Unless I get a hold of excess sugars or seed oils, I actually now have normal movements in my bowels, which hadn't happened since my 20s. So you may start out with a half a packet twice a day and see how your gut does. Um, but the right types of fiber should not increase your or inflame your diverticulosis. So a lack of fiber can actually cause you to have some of that diverticuli. That's in the very end of your colon. So if your colon is struggling at the very end, where it's just before you pass stuff out, you're more likely to have that diverticuli. If you're hydrated and you have the right kinds of fiber in, and that's your gut is having a better time moving that through the last part of your colon, it relieves some of that stress that's causing some of the diverticuli. So the thing I would say is try it. Just try it. There's a 90-day money back guarantee. Try it, do a half a packet a day. Or I've had a lady start with like an eighth of a teaspoon until she could tolerate it. And then she worked up to a quarter of a teaspoon and then a half a teaspoon and then a teaspoon until she got to a full packet of this. Similar issues, now does not have those issues. It just takes a little different approach depending on what's happening with your body. But understand that that diverticuli can actually be linked to this whole insulin resistance piece as well as your gut being slowed down. Now, when we look at things like GLP-1s, they're causing a huge slowdown in your gut, which can actually increase the diverticuli in your end colon. So I would wonder to guess what fiber you're doing, because if you're doing Benefiber or Metamucil or those, yeah, you have a very high likelihood that you're causing some inflammation there. when you're using a fiber like this, understand that all fibers are different. They don't all work the same. They don't all have the same job in the gut. So when you look at this one now, it's starting to thicken up already. And you'll see that it's starting to thicken here. It's gentler on the gut. Metamucil and benefiber don't do this. Okay. They're just, they're, the fibers in those are really, they can help with a little bit with blood sugar spikes. And there have been some studies that show they can reduce it by about 10%. This product reduces a blood sugar spike by about 20%. Now, as we're seeing when we take it right before we eat, it's actually reducing it even more. But because of the soluble fibers in there that are a little bit gentler and whatnot, we're just not having the same inflammatory response. So you might want to give that a thought. Now, the tea, there is a way the tea affects that, but I don't have that information on the top of my head. I'll have to look that up and talk about it maybe Monday. But the tea can help as well. It's worth a shot. We're just going to have to deal with it differently, and that's why you get me as a coach, because I help you start to work through that. I'm not a doctor. I can't diagnose. I can't prescribe, but I can help you understand what's happening with this and help coach you through the system so that you can get your health back and do it in a manner that doesn't require all the drugs that are causing more damage. While we talk about GLP-1s, and I'm going to have to hop off because my phone is going to die. GLP-1s, where was I going with that? Oh, yeah. The people who are on GLP-1s, and people get upset at me for this, but there's science behind it. And Dr. Bickman spoke about it last night. The same way that I speak about it, I'll try and get a clip from that and see if I can put that up in a video. But about 40% of the weight that's lost with GLP-1 drugs is lean mass. Now, that's not just muscle. That could be bone, that could be ligaments, that could be a number of tissues. But you're losing lean mass to lose about 40% of that weight. So if you lose 100 pounds, yeah, maybe 60 of it's coming from fat, but 40 of it is coming from things like, up to 40% of it is coming from things like bone, muscle, ligaments, that lean, dense tissue that we need. So that's really not the best way to do it. Now, those drugs are also making people so nauseated that they just don't want to eat. Many people, and Dr. Bickman is an authority on GLP-1s. He's studied them for a long time. What he says is in about 2 years, most people are like, I'm just sick and tired of feeling nauseated. I'm going to go off of this. I've kind of achieved my weight that I want now. We're good. But what happens is they gain the weight back. But now they've lost up to 40% in lean tissue. So where's that weight gain coming back? It's coming back in fat. So now you have even more fat and you have less of the tissue like muscles that are going to help you be more insulin sensitive. Is that really a route that you want to take? Yeah, you're going to get skinny right away. You might be damaging your pancreas. You might be damaging your heart. You might be damaging your thyroid. You might be damaging a number of other things that we've seen reported. It can slow your gastric emptying so much that you end up with blockages. This is the GLP-1 drugs like Mounjaro, tirzepatide, Ozempic, semaglutide, a number of other names out there. If it has "ide" on the end of it, it's probably an incretin, a GLP-1 drug. So what happens when you get that blockage is you just can't get food through. And so people on these drugs start to notice that they're having these really rancid burps because the food is just still sitting in their gut. So they're hungry. They're not as hungry, I'm sorry. They're nauseated, so they're not eating. So yeah, they have this severe caloric restriction that's causing them to lose weight, but they have this rotting mass of food in their gut. And when the gut can't move it along, it starts to create a blockage. And when that blockage becomes stuck, it can be life-threatening. So that's not what you want. What the fibers in this system do is they help strengthen your gut. So although we're slowing down how much sugar gets ingested or metabolized, or how much fat gets metabolized and how much gets passed through and how and when. We're slowing some of that action down. And so it's not just hitting you real rapidly. We're still strengthening the gut and allowing the gut to do its job and be healthy along the way so that as we extract the nutrients we need and pass off some of that excess that we don't, our gut is stronger and it's just doing the job. Less gas and bloating, less of those IBS and other intestinal problems that we're seeing when people just are not able to move their foods through. Insulin resistance already slows your gut down through a number of what pathways, including nerve damage, and then you add those GLP-1 drugs, now it's all but stopping that. Now you have a gastrointestinal system that's just not functioning. So when your liver and your gallbladder are not contracting, you're starting to form gallstones and you can lose your gallbladder. And a number of people have reported having to have a cholecystectomy or gallbladder removal after being on those drugs. It's freezing up a system that you don't want frozen up. You can do all of the great things, yeah, at a little bit less intense rate by allowing your system the right nutrition to be able to produce this GLP-1 naturally. And when you do it naturally at a lower and slower rate, you're still going to see the weight loss. You're still going to see the satiety. You're still going to see all that without all the damage to your system. So it's a tea that I have 2 points during the day. This one's almost gone. So before I go to paint my son's house, I'll be mixing up another one, probably in a bigger jug than this, and I might add some matcha to it. It still is not breaking my fast. This does not break my fast. And I'll have plenty of energy. I notice that when I'm fasted during this short fast, this 16-hour fast, during this part of the day when I haven't eaten, I have more energy because guess what? My body's not trying to break down and digest all of this stuff. I actually just have energy. My body's pulling energy from the fat cells. My body's pulling energy from cells that need to go. It's strengthening my heart. It's strengthening my liver. It's strengthening my kidneys. It's strengthening my gut to be in a little bit of a fasted state. It's giving me more brain mental clarity. I actually perform better when I'm in this shortened fasted state. So those are some things. So the two products that I use, the tea in the morning, the fiber before I eat, and some fasting are the greatest parts of what happened for me. I do want to say before I hop off that some of the other things, like I mentioned earlier, when I got home yesterday, I was super sick, not gonna lie, so full of histamines and inflammation, and I was feeling extremely nauseated. My heart was struggling. So I took some time off and I just decided I have to focus on proteins and fats to allow my body to heal. And that's what I did with this. It was chicken, cream cheese, butter, and some seasoning. And it was amazing. Didn't feel like I was struggling at all. I stayed fuller. I felt better. I didn't have all the bloating and I didn't have any gastritis attacks. I didn't have any of that. You've got to focus on proteins and fats. Start your meals with fiber. Allow your gut the opportunity to work in a way that it's meant to. Allow those fibers to feed the probiotics in your system and create short chain fatty acids that are going to help you with burning fat, that are going to help with all the other things that we need going on in the body for healing. And then feed it real nutrition by giving it building blocks with protein and supporting the protein with some good healthy fats. Healthy fats are not seed oils or those highly processed oils. Healthy fats are going to be coconut oil, avocado oil, tallow, butter, that cream cheese I had. In fact, when I do have a protein shake because I need to fill in for protein, I will add one of those to it. I'll add maybe some raw nut butter. I'll add some cream cheese. I'll add some coconut oil or coconut milk. I'll add some avocado to my protein shake to make sure that I'm getting the right amount of fats with my protein. Your protein needs fat to be metabolized correctly. So, fiber, protein, and fats are the biggest things you want to do. Limit your carbs, do some time based eating, and move your body. Okay. That's simple, right? It's a solution that actually works, and science is showing more and more that this solution actually can work as well without all of the negative side effects as those drugs that they're being given. So, again, do a little research. Look up yerba mate and see what all the benefits are. But understand that the reason this yerba mate is doing so well is because it's so highly concentrated and formulated specifically to help with your metabolism. All right. You guys, the link is in my bio. Just go up there and I will put the link over here. Now, Roxanne, if you are on one of the newer GLP-1, how do you begin your plan without having blood sugar spikes, or did you taper from diabetes meds to my healthy plan? So I was on metformin for a very short period of time, and I found that my body could not tolerate metformin. Had so much nausea, diarrhea, vomiting, and body-wide pain from metformin that I didn't do it for very long. So I really wasn't on a diabetes med to do this. Roxanne, you can start this alongside of those medications, because I get it. This is what we've been told, is to do the GLP-1s, and doctors are selling them. Trust me, I worked in doctors' offices. They get kickbacks from selling those drugs. I have two family members who worked for Big Pharma, and they go in and they do all these big lunches and dinners and stuff and educate people on the drugs so that they will sell the drugs more, so the company can make more money. And they actually, depending on how many prescriptions they write, can get kickbacks from that. So what you want to know is you can do this while titrating back on those GLP-1s. If you really feel like you need the GLP-1 as an excess added because you just don't have the strength to do this on your own, then you can do it side by side. This isn't going to impede those. But understand that those GLP-1 drugs, they started with a very minimal dose to get results. And then again, now the dose they're giving is so high, there hasn't been enough studies to show what the long-term effects of those are. So even Dr. Bickman says, just try to titrate off of those as quickly as you can and replace it with something like this that's going to support your metabolism and your plan better. Also, with GLP-1 drugs, understand that they're giving you this quick fix, but is anybody talking to you about your diet and how insulin resistance happened and what you can do long term to solve your diabetes and insulin resistance? They're not. They're giving you a drug, and then that drug stops working as well, and then they have to give you a higher dose, and then they give you a higher dose, and in the meantime, that's making your body shut down. The system does not impede those or interact with those in any negative way. So if you need to stay on your GLP-1 until you can titrate off of it, you can do that. Just start the system and start to try and replace that with the GLP-1s that you're currently taking. There really isn't a need for GLP-1s. They're just a convenience, but they're a convenience that's causing, in my opinion, more health damage than they're worth. So you can do it exactly. Now, for my healthy plan that I do, I about a month in, I had 13 different medications. Some were for my diabetes, some were for my heart, some were for my joint pain, some were for a number of other issues that I had going on. I am a little bit rogue, and I just didn't like where I was at. And this is not what I'm telling anyone else to do. Please work with your doctor. But I chose about a month in to just ditch all the meds and simply rely on the system. Now, so today I'm still medication free. Even with the histamine response I had this last week, I did do some Benadryl to help get those histamines down. But I don't have any prescribed medications still today, 3 years later. So I've been able to manage my health, keep my joints healthy, start rebuilding my heart health, keep the weight off, do all of the things I've done with just this system and no medications. And it's really freeing to not have that. While I talk about that, the system does cost about $5 a day, but I was spending $130 a month or so in those medications that were not fixing me. I was still getting sick and I still wasn't getting better. But now I've swapped that money for what I pay for the system, and I have a much better time. Again, running up and down the stairs where 3 years ago I couldn't even imagine stairs. Playing with my kids, going out and doing heavy work, painting my son's house, doing all of these things that mean something to me because I'm adding to my family. That's the goal of this. It's not just about my health. It's all the downline effects of my family and my friends and my lifestyle that have changed because my health has gotten back in a healthy way. And it's so simple. Everybody's so used to me. We go to a restaurant, I pull my little thing out of my purse. If I don't have a bottle with me, I just get an extra glass of water. Not a big deal. You guys, I sit down at a restaurant and say, "Hey, can I get a glass of water, no ice, with about this much water in it? I have a supplement I need to take before I eat." Always, always, always. They're more than happy to bring me a glass of water. Not a problem. Food comes, I drink my fiber, I start eating, we're good. It's that easy. So, and then the tea, like on the plane and driving from Washington State to Montana, the tea, I get so tired, you guys, with my ADHD. I don't know if anybody else has ADHD, but when I'm driving, when I'm sit down and I'm focused on driving, my brain starts to get really tired. The tea helps me when I'm in those states where I'm kind of locked up and not doing 100 things. This keeps me active and alert when I'm in those situations without causing damage to my heart and without causing all of those other things. But the good thing is, I have energy and I'm keeping my blood sugars low. So, you may, like Roxanne, I'm just thinking through your question again. You may have some blood sugar spikes if your glucagon is out of control as well as your insulin. And you just have to hopefully, understand a little bit about what's going on with your body and know that that's a natural reaction until you get your body more sensitive to glucagon as well as insulin. And as soon as you start to get that normalized, those blood sugar spikes start to come down. Now, some people want to, one last thing, some people will notice what we call the dawn phenomenon, where when you wake up, your blood sugars are spiked a little bit higher. And especially with insulin resistant people, this can happen more drastically in the morning because, especially like right after you wake up, if you're doing your blood sugars right after you wake up, you might see a bigger spike because your cortisol is risen, and now that's eliciting this whole response in your body telling glucagon we need more sugar in the system, we need energy to get up and move throughout the day. So you are going to have a rise of blood sugars right as you wake up because it's your body's way of saying, hey, it's time to get up and get moving. And your body knows. If you get up at 5:30 every day for work, have you ever noticed sometimes you wake up without the alarm? Your body's just magically awake. That's cortisol doing its job. That's a blood sugar rise coming up to give you energy to get up and move. It's normal, it's natural. If it's too high in the mornings, it just means you're resistant to glucagon, just like you are insulin. And just by doing all of this stuff, you can get all of that back under control. The GLP-1s are not doing that for you. Okay. So we'll talk some more on Monday, you guys. I'm going to go back over Dr. Bickman's talk many times this weekend until I can get all of the stuff that he talked about. He talked about so many components about how the tea works, how the fiber works, why it's making these great changes. And I really want to be able to pass those on to you guys. So we'll talk about some more of that Monday. Just know that this system really does work and it's been scientifically proven to work. It's something that you can do without damaging your health, have the long-term effects you're looking for, and actually get your health back from all of this stuff. Arthritis, vertigo, skin tags, melasma, hair loss, all of it was reversed, even the edema and neuropathy. So one thing I should have taken a picture of my feet. So I'm traveling from Washington to Baltimore on a red eye. I got home, realized that my car keys were in a box that I shipped with a bunch of the stuff that mom gave me. Somehow I had dropped them in a box, and so they were in the postal service. So I get to the airport, no keys to my car. So I have to take an Uber home, get the spare set of keys, go back down to Baltimore, get my car, and come back. All of that, extremely fatigued and having a high histamine response, my legs and knees and feet still were not swollen and painful like they would have been without all of those things 3 years ago. The results are real. the effects in your system are real when you can get this insulin down and give your body the nutrients it needs to actually just do what it's supposed to do. And we just haven't been taught or talked to about what's really happening with our health. And that's why I'm talking about it. So we'll see you guys Monday. Thanks for hanging out with me. Thanks for joining in and asking questions. Roxanne, I'd love to talk to you and see how we can get you feeling better and started on the system and hopefully get you off those GLP-1s. So, all right, we'll talk to you guys Monday. Have a great day.